I'm just autoing Simulated Universe right now and having it run in the background, but I want to talk about Genshin Impact versus Star Rail versus, Honkai Impact Third, because I don't think the comparison between any of these games is fair. First and foremost, yes, they're fundamentally different games. One's open world, this one's turn-based. Another one, I don't really know how to describe Honkai Impact. I have not played it. I haven't played it enough to really give a valid opinion on it. But overall, they are very different games to such an extent to where it's kind of unfair to even... Did you get the right one, Sealy? Yes, you did. Let's go for that buff state. Yeah. I don't think it's fair to compare any one of them because the communities are different. The fans are different. The gacha style is different to a degree. And the games are so dramatically different that if you go with one, expecting it to be like the other, you're going to find yourself disappointed. If you go into Star Rail expecting it to be like Genshin, you're going to be disappointed. If you go into Star Rail expecting it to be like Honkai Impact Third, you're going to be disappointed. And that's an important point to mention because I do think a lot of people are rushing through this content. I did, but I'm perfectly fine with that. I have other things I want to do. I do think a lot of people are rushing through this with the expectation, maybe the mindset this is vaguely similar to Genshin, that you can just play for an extremely long amount of time, but you can't. This game doesn't have that. Despite it being produced by the same company, it doesn't really have... We'll go here. I have Bailu's Hero. It's this. This game doesn't necessarily have the same foundation as Genshin Impact. This game doesn't necessarily have the same amount of content in the beginning as Genshin does. It is a fundamentally different game, and the comparisons between it and Genshin are only going to make it much, much worse long term. Because the game doesn't have the same playstyle. The game doesn't have the ability and the new factor that Genshin had. And by that I mean, this game isn't going to be able to make its own community. This game as a whole is going to have to deal with the Honkai Impact Third fanbase being on top of it, plus the Genshin fanbase, plus every character who's a slight reference to a different character being a more or less determining factor in how people view them because they're going to hear extra information that may influence their decisions. And as a whole, Jesus, what am I picking? But I do think this game having to piggyback and having to deal with the success that Genshin previously had and the name that's now attached to that because of HoYoverse is going to negatively impact its ability to grow on its own. The biggest downside to Genshin being so popular is that the gacha community it attaches itself to or is correlated with doesn't allow a new community to grow from it. If you are looking at Tower of Fantasy, we saw that game, crash and burn due to other reasons, but we also saw that for a pretty long amount of time, the Genshin fandom did move over there to play it. And the problem with that is, when you have such a large fandom that wants to play a different game, that wants to go over and find content, and you have the creators of that game, the content creators, moving over to play it and cover it, you don't allow that game's community to grow on its own. If you are a Genshin player, and maybe you stuck around for the beginnings of it with YouTube, you watched a pretty large chunk of creators start with Genshin. Not as in they moved over to it, but a lot of them legitimately got their start from that game and grew from there. Genshin had its own community, just like Honkai does to a degree. And Star Rail having to deal with this influx of creators from different games covering it, yes, it's good from a new player perspective because you have a bunch of new videos, but long term, it's going to be much more difficult for content creators who legitimately just play this game out of adoration and love to actually want to talk about it and to actually find success with it. Yes, they're fundamentally different games. Yes, each game has its own unique style and unique combat system, and stories are vaguely related, but overall, the games make no sense to be compared solely because they have different lores. Solely because people play them for different reasons. This one's much more casual than I believe Honkai and definitely Genshin. And if we're looking at long-term viability, this game isn't outright better than Genshin. Pom Pom is better. Pom Pom is way better. And yes, we have more features like the condensed, which is just immersifiers. You don't really have condensed resin. I don't know why people keep comparing it to that. And yes, we have higher recharge rates and technically a higher cap, but we're much more gated behind that cap. If you're looking at this game as a whole, you have to deal with the fact that basically any material you want for your character is gated behind that stamina system. In Genshin, you can go and defeat mobs. You can go and explore and find chests and find talent books in them. You can go and do a quest or a world quest, maybe in Mount Arkong, in Liyue for, I believe, diligence and prosperity books. You can do a lot more to work around that. Here, you can't. Here, you can't, even though Yes, you can go around in Simulated Universe to pick up mats for monsters. You can't necessarily use those to build up traces. Everything is locked behind your stamina. And so if you don't have stamina, you don't have a game to play. Because world quests and story quests and side quests aren't that spread out. The game feels half finished. And I don't think I'm the only one saying that. This is a fun game. I like this game, but there isn't enough game. It's not as though you rush through it. It's as though, yeah, in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in a month, that is it. And yes, this is an open world. And yes, that affects a lot. But it shouldn't affect it to the degree that it does here because this is from a company and developer that already experienced this once. HoYoverse experienced the same thing with Genshin. People ran through it. And it not being open world feels like there should be much more depth to the characters. It feels like there should be much more overall than there already is. And there's not. And it disappoints me. I don't hate this game. I love it. I like it. Sure, I hate Zilla's design, but that's a different topic for a different story. I just think that the constant praise gets over Genshin, and the constant references to Honkai Impact are going to sort of cloud people's vision of the game as a whole, at least as of right now, and it's going to have trouble long term. Because the moment a new region comes out in Genshin, people are going to hop over there. If Honkai Impact gets a big update, people are going to go back over there. And then Star Wars left in this in-between state, where you have people who are just getting in, people who want to play the game, people who are interested in the stories and the lore, and want to find it out for themselves in the game itself. I think, oh, we completed it, good. In the game itself. We don't have that right now. We have a... I don't even use Danang. Whatever. We have a mix and amalgamation of two separate communities that really don't get along to begin with in one game that doesn't really have enough content for either community to fully interact with. And it's gonna hurt when people reach that point. It's gonna hurt a lot. And I'm aware that yes, I've speedrun a lot of content. I'm aware that yes, I've legitimately done a lot. I have a bunch of built up characters. Yes, I pre-farm mats for Zile and Tingyun and Yangsheng. And I'm aware that, you know, my position in my account may be much higher than your position. I don't think a lot of individuals kind of got, you know, super in position 5, their light cone for still cruising in Stellar Seas. I'm aware that I may be in a better position and place and further story point than a lot of you. But I do think that it was a mistake to have this game come out with the second or third world, whatever it is, half-baked. When you get to a point in the game where you're legitimately actually settling in, you know, recognize the groove you're in, you recognize the characters, you know the story, and you're playing through legitimately enjoying it, and then you're hit with a bam, wait for the next installment, that sucks. Because yes, this banner is ending soon. And yes, maybe when it does, we get that new patch of story, and maybe it updates more quickly because it's not open world, but we can't see that yet. And so you're left with these people who maybe legitimately want to play the game, but can't. And you're left with individuals who may legitimately be interested in the game, but don't know where to start. Do you start with Honkai Impact 3rd lore? Do you start with this game's lore individually that it already gives you access to? Do you start... I hate Zilla, never mind. Do you start with Genshin? And when you're thrown at so many different sides, maybe you're a Genshin player and, you know, you came over here to check it out, but you're seeing a bunch of the content creators you maybe didn't like. That's an issue. Legitimately, that is an issue. And I think that, as of right now, the comparisons between this and Genshin are stupid. The comparisons between this and Honkai Impact 3rd are idiotic. I want this game to stand on its own and for people to recognize the, you know, qualities that are really good and the ones that are really bad and the issues they're going to have with it and if it's a game for them. Because as of right now, you're going to be hearing a lot about people saying, this is better than X, this is better than Y, this is this amazing, this is this great. But we aren't deep enough in to even talk about that. Because how many individuals have legitimately reached that end point? How many individuals have legitimately gotten to that point and deep enough in the story and deep enough in the game's systems to actually say, hey, this works? The relic system. I'm being blunt here. Nobody should farm relics pre-50. But if you get to 50 and there's a 50-50 shot, you're basically spending 40 stamina for 1.5 relics, and that's not good. This is a worse relic system than Genshin. Why? Because you need a 4-piece set and then a 2-piece set. And as a result, there is no off-piece, so you're crying the whole time. If we're being blunt about the system of, you know, materials you need, And light cones, I'm gonna be honest, as an individual with Zila's light cone, it does not add, yeah, it adds damage. But one of the things about Genshin that people legitimately liked was once you got a character's weapon, it looked perfect on them. If you got Engulfing Lightning for Raiden, it looks great on her, as opposed to Primordial Jadewing Spear. But light cones don't have that effect. Building up a character doesn't give you anything unique. There's no unique, outlier. If Zila could walk around at E2 and had her skill active the entire time where she was invisible, that would be different. But there's no visual effect. There's no story. Why are the menus worse? Can someone please explain to me why this isn't in the character menu? Why I can't look at this and see story, voice? Because all of this is there. All of this is there. So just add it. Just go here and add it down here. Why isn't it there? I don't understand. It's a slight issue, it's an annoyance, and I legitimately want it to be fixed, because it should be. This is a good game, not a great game, not a perfect game, it's a good game. If it goes down the line and gets updated with more story, and gets updated with more, unique features, or maybe we just get access to better things in general, maybe it's a great game. But as of right now, it is not the Genshin killer. It is not better than Honkai Impact Third, because it doesn't have enough. And we haven't reached that point to evaluate it fairly. It's still in that new honeymoon stage where everything's great, everything's amazing, and we'll see where it goes down the line. But I'll be here, and I hope you will too. Either way, it's been a rant, it's been a ramble. Consider subscribing.